Hey guys, have you ever found yourself saying this a lot? Like, I'm sorry, my English isn't good? Or apologizing before you even finish your sentence? Let me tell you something. We've never apologized for someone's English level.
Never. And honestly, I don't think I've ever met anyone who's been upset over someone else's English skills.
Yeah, I mean, we all know English is tricky sometimes, but apologizing for your level? That's just unnecessary.
Totally. If someone does get offended by your English mistakes, well, they're probably the kind of person who yells at puppies or cuts in line at the grocery store. I mean, it's their problem, not yours.
Ha, yeah, but here's the thing. Apologizing too much can actually hold you back. It makes you focus on what you can't do instead of what you can.
Right. And the more you apologize, the harder it feels to just speak freely. That's the opposite of what you want.
In today's episode, we're going to help you stop apologizing and show you how to grow your confidence and fluency. We'd also like to tell you 5 things not to do when learning English because they can stop you from making progress.
Yep, so let's dive in. Stop apologizing. So, let's start with this. Stop apologizing for your English level. It's such a common habit, but it's not helping you grow.
You know what? When you say, I'm sorry, my English isn't good, you're actually making yourself feel smaller. And honestly, it's unnecessary. Most people aren't judging you as harshly as you think they are. Let me tell you a story. Back in college, we had a lot of international students in our class. One day, our professor, a native English speaker, said something that really stayed with me. He told them, never apologize for your English level. English isn't your first language, and the fact that you can do a presentation in English is amazing. I could never do that in a second language. Be proud of yourselves. Isn't that such a great perspective?
Oh, totally. I mean, think about it. How many native English speakers can give a full presentation in Spanish, French, or Mandarin? Probably very few. The effort you've put into learning English is something to celebrate, not apologize for.
And here's the thing. When you apologize, you're setting the wrong tone. It's like you're saying, I'm not good enough to have this conversation, when really, you're just learning. A better approach is to focus on what you can say. For example, instead of saying, sorry, my English is bad, try something like, I'm still learning English, so let me know if I need to repeat anything. It shows confidence and keeps the conversation moving.
That's such a good tip. Also, most people are really patient, especially if they know English isn't your first language. I've never felt annoyed or offended when someone makes a mistake. In fact, I respect the effort they're putting in. And honestly, if someone does get upset, that's on them. Like, what kind of person gets angry because you're trying to communicate? Someone who probably spends their free time being mean to puppies, right?
Ha, exactly. And let's not forget, making mistakes is how you improve. If you're so busy apologizing, you might miss the chance to learn from the experience. Instead, own your mistakes. For example, if you use the wrong word, you can say, oh, I meant, and correct yourself. That's a great way to show you're learning.
Right. Another thing to keep in mind is this. Don't apologize for not knowing something. Instead, treat it as an opportunity to learn. For example, if someone uses a word you don't understand, just say, what does that mean? Or, can you explain that? That's way more productive than apologizing.
And here's the big takeaway. Whether you've been learning English for years or just a few months, you've worked so hard to get to this point. Don't underestimate yourself. Every word you say, every sentence you try, is a step forward. You don't need to apologize for that. Celebrate it instead.
So, confidence is key. If you focus on what you can do instead of what you can't, you'll build trust in yourself and your abilities. And that's when real progress happens.
Being ashamed to speak. So, let's talk about something that holds a lot of learners back: being too ashamed to speak. It's totally normal to feel shy or nervous. But here's the thing, avoiding speaking altogether, that's the real mistake. Think about it. How do babies learn? By babbling. Nobody expects perfect sentences from a baby, and the same goes for you.
Right. Babies don't overthink it. They just try, fail, and try again. That's how they improve. So instead of feeling ashamed, embrace the idea that speaking, even if it's not perfect, is practice. Every time you have a conversation, you're building confidence and learning something new.
And let's not forget, the only way to get better at speaking is, well, speaking. You don't have to wait until your English is perfect. In fact, perfection is overrated. Instead, focus on just expressing yourself. Even if you make mistakes, most people will understand what you mean.
Totally. And here's a tip. Speak slowly. A lot of people think they need to talk fast to sound fluent, but clarity is way more important. When you slow down, you'll feel more in control, and your listener will have an easier time understanding you.
That's so true. Another thing you can do is use simple phrases to manage the conversation. For example, if you didn't catch what someone said, you can say, "Can you repeat that?" Or, if you're unsure, try, "I'm still learning. Could you help me with that?" Those phrases show you're trying, and people will respect that.
Oh, and here's a fun way to practice. Leave a comment. Whether it's on our podcast, a YouTube video, or even a social media post, just say something. It doesn't matter if it's a full question or a short thought. Every time you write or speak, you're taking a step forward. And hey, if you have a question, drop it in the comments. We'd love to help.
Exactly. Start small and keep trying. Even if you're just practicing a sentence or two at first, it's progress. Remember, every mistake is part of the learning process. So don't be too hard on yourself. Just keep speaking.
Don't take it personally when people don't understand. Sometimes you'll say something and the other person just won't get it. That's not always your fault.
Well, there are so many reasons why someone might not understand you. Maybe they're not familiar with your accent, or maybe they were distracted and didn't catch what you said. It doesn't mean your English is bad.
Yeah, and honestly, native speakers get misunderstood all the time, too. It's just part of communicating. You don't need to take it personally or think it's because of your skills.
One thing you can do when this happens is to rephrase what you said. For example, if you don't know the exact word, you can describe it instead. Like, instead of saying, "I don't know the word," try, "It's similar to," and then explain it. That way, you're keeping the conversation going.
That's such a good tip. And you know what? People usually appreciate it when you try to explain things in your own way. It shows you're making an effort, and that's what matters.
Another thing you can do is ask a simple question to check if they understood. Something like, "Does that make sense?" Or, "Should I explain it another way?" It keeps the conversation smooth and shows that you're open to working together to communicate.
And remember, if someone doesn't understand, it's not a reflection of your ability. Communication is a two-way street, and both people are responsible for making it work. Just stay calm and don't let it discourage you.
Well, say, if one way doesn't work, try another. And don't forget, you're learning and improving every time you speak. That's what counts. Don't compare yourself to other English speakers. You know, it's so easy to look at someone who's fluent and think, "I'll never get there." But here's the thing, they started somewhere too. Nobody wakes up one day and magically speaks perfect English. It's all about the journey.
Let me tell you something. I love the phrase, comparison is the thief of joy. It's so true. When you compare yourself to others, you're focusing on what you don't have instead of celebrating how far you've come. Your journey is unique, and honestly, the only person you should compare yourself to is your past self.
Right. Instead of thinking, "I'm not as good as them," ask yourself, "Am I better than I was last month or last year?" That's what really matters. Progress looks different for everyone, and it doesn't have to be a race.
And let's not forget, everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Maybe someone speaks faster, but you might have a better vocabulary or a great accent. Comparing only shows one piece of the picture.
That's a great point. One thing that really helps is tracking your progress. For example, keep a little journal or notebook where you write down new phrases, words, or things you've learned. Then, look back after a month or two and see how much you've improved. It's so motivating.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be complicated. You could even record yourself speaking English once a month. When you listen to older recordings, you'll notice how much clearer and more confident you've become. It's a great way to remind yourself that you're growing.
And don't forget to celebrate the small wins. Learned 5 new words? Celebrate. Held a conversation without pausing too much? Celebrate. Those little moments add up to big progress over time.
And remember, learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint. Focus on your own growth and don't let comparisons distract you from how amazing your journey is. Don't be afraid of making mistakes.
All right, let's talk about something that really holds a lot of people back: being afraid of making mistakes. I know it seems counterintuitive, but honestly, you should try making as many mistakes as possible. Why? Because if you're making mistakes, that means you're actually speaking English and improving.
Exactly. If you aren't making mistakes, then you're probably not speaking enough. And that's where the real learning happens. Of course, you don't want to intentionally make mistakes, but don't be afraid when they happen. That's how you grow.
Mistakes are actually proof that you're learning. Without mistakes, there's no growth. Think about it. Every time you make a mistake, you have the chance to correct it and get better. So instead of getting upset, just see it as part of the process.
Right. Some of the most charming English speakers I know, people who are really fun to talk to, still mix up grammar or pronunciation. But you know what? It doesn't matter. The goal is communication. If people understand you, that's what counts.
And you know what? Mistakes aren't failures. They're experiments. Every time you make a mistake, you're experimenting with the language and learning how it works. So, instead of feeling bad, reframe that mistake as a step forward.
And here's something you can try. After a mistake, try again. Maybe say it a little differently or use a new word you've just learned. And if possible, ask for feedback. People love helping others learn, and most of the time, they won't even notice the mistake.
That's right. And remember, nobody expects you to be perfect. What matters is that you're trying and improving every day. So, when you make a mistake, just smile and learn from it.
Every mistake is a lesson, so embrace them. The more mistakes you make, the better you'll get.
All right, let's quickly recap what we've covered today. First, stop apologizing for your English level. Remember, it's a journey, and we all start somewhere.
Yep, and don't be ashamed to speak. Every conversation, even with mistakes, is progress. So speak up, slow down if you need to, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Remember, don't take it personally if people don't understand you right away. It happens to everyone. And just rephrase or explain things in a different way.
And lastly, don't compare yourself to others. Track your own progress and celebrate every step forward. Your learning is unique to you.
So, if you're ever feeling discouraged, remember, mistakes are part of the learning process, and they're how you grow. Keep speaking, keep learning, and most importantly, keep having fun with it.
We believe in you, and your English will keep getting better. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.